Well, good afternoon, all. It is great to have you back. I know that we've somewhat been on a little hiatus, but we are grateful to start the new year with an awesome special guest and topic today. So, welcome to our lunch tables. I am your host today, Jason Kegabine, Operations Director, and we are looking forward to today's topic. Our ED, our Donna Golub, is currently in Washington, D.C., and she's on the Hill advocating for our youth and organizations to speak to our government officials about the great work that we are doing. So a couple housekeeping things before I introduce our guest and turn it over to him. If you could just have your names displayed so that we can identify you for attendance if you are looking for some credits, and then also we can identify those and match those up in the chat when there are some questions or comments that you might have for our guest speaker today. Also, I know that many of us might be experiencing some snow and at home today, working remotely, maybe even have your children at home. Make sure that you're muted so that we can have our undivided attention and all ears on our guest speaker today. If you have any questions or you have some comments or remarks regarding the topic that we're offering to you, make sure that you put those in the chat and we will make sure that those are addressed during the Q&A session and our breakouts. We will have a presentation that will last around 45 minutes, about 50 minutes. And then after that, we will take a quick 5-minute break. And then we will go into our breakout sessions. And then from there, we will rejoin back together for our final thoughts. And that's all that I have for housekeeping. So again, thank you so much for joining us and being here today. We have a great turnout, great speaker, and great topic that all of us are very passionate about learning and growing and continuing to develop. So today's topic is, how do you communicate with youth? What an important topic that we are hearing today and discussing, as we know that communication is key across the board for all of us. And sometimes I think we often forget that we have two ears and one mouth. And so it's good that we can be able to get refreshed and reminded of that, and to open up our ears and to listen so that we can understand rather than listening to respond. So grateful that we can be reminded of that and the importance of that. So a little bit about our speaker today. His name is Anthony Murdock, and he is a purpose-driven, action-oriented servant leader and proud product of the Indianapolis, Indiana area. He's a lawyer, he's a lecturer, and a business coach. He's graduated from Butler University in December of 2017 with 2 degrees, one in political science and the other in religion. He went on to graduate from IUN McKinney School of Law in May of 2022, and he now serves as the lecturer in entrepreneurship and innovation at his alma mater, where he's also the founder of Murdock LLC, a consulting company that empowers people's brands and businesses to leverage their power and their story. Ultimately, he's in the business of the greatest powerpreneur Indianapolis has ever seen. He serves on the advisory board of the Hub for Black Affairs and Community Engagement at Butler University, and serves as the governance chair for the Indianapolis Community Food Access Coalition. Last but not least, he's a member of the Eastern Star Church and Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporation. Listen, folks, you're going to be so grateful that you signed up today. A lot of great reviews, a lot of great feedback, a very important topic. So without any further ado, I welcome our guest today, Anthony Murdock. Thank you so much for being here. The floor is all yours.
Let me give Jason a hand clap for the incredible introduction. Great job, Jason. You did excellent. You did excellent.
Thank you, sir.
So I do this with my students all the time. It's a great way to kind of set the tone. Let's do a thumbs up, thumbs to the side, or thumbs down in the chat. I can't see any of your faces because I gotta keep my eye on my notes, keep my eyes on the time. But in the chat, I see some of y'all dropped your name and such. Tell me if you're thumbs up, thumbs to the side, or thumbs down. Thumbs up meaning this is a great day. Thumbs to the side meaning I'm present. Thumbs down meaning I've been better. It's just a great way to be able to get some engagement. Okay, great. I see a couple of thumbs up. Y'all are, wow, y'all using the emojis too? I thought y'all don't just type. Thumbs up, thumbs to the side, thumbs down. This is good. This is good. Understood. I see you, Kelly. Latoya. Understood. Understood. Okay, way to bring it back, Courtney. Well, look, y'all, I won't read everybody's comments, but I do just want to say thank y'all so much for this opportunity. As Jason had mentioned, I learned about you all's organization through an acquaintance, and I actually became acquainted with this individual, Dwayne, who's a part of y'all's organization at the IYI conference back this spring. And I won't go into too much depth about my experience at the conference, but there's 2 hotels in downtown Indianapolis by the same name. And Jason, I went to the wrong hotel. And so I was walking around the hotel across the street, man, panicking because I'm like, I'm supposed to be presenting and I don't see anybody. And so I call my contact and they're like, we're across the street. So man, I sprint across the street. I'm super duper nervous. And I walk into the space and it's a room full of people. And I was like, I didn't even expect this many people, kind of like this session. I see all y'all people here today. I didn't expect it to be this jam packed. And so Jason, I'm like, man, I'm late. I'm nervous. I can't breathe because I sprinted across the street. What are we gonna do? And I kid you not, Doc, the story kicked in. The story kicked in, man, and we were able to stabilize the environment. We took a few deep breaths together. My good friend Recovery Ray calls them mindful moments. And before I knew it, Jason, I didn't have any time left. And we broke curses, we built wealth, and we bridged the gap. And because of Dwayne's positive experience, I don't know if Dwayne's on here now, but if you are, shout out to you, brother. Dwayne connected me with Donna. And so Donna and I got together over Zoom just like this. And she, in essence, expressed what Dwayne had shared and felt like I might be able to add some value to you all on today. So I don't take it lightly at all to be back in community with y'all. For those that have already seen me or those that don't, I won't reintroduce myself because Jason did a bomb.com job. But I do want to drive home one point, and it's that I'm in the business of becoming the greatest powerpreneur that my city and shoot, the world has ever seen. And y'all, powerpreneurship is the art of strategically leveraging what I believe to be a person's asset, their story. And when we have this conversation, right? So if you got your piece of paper, your pencil, you got your pen, your notepad, your Twitter fingers are tight fast, just make sure you tag Murdoch because you're not slick. Get them out because I'm going to talk my talk, but I'm going to give you some concrete takeaways too. At the top of your paper, at the top of your tweet, at the top of your Google Doc, at the top of your notes app, this is the title for today, right? Jason gave it to us. I'm going to give it to you again. How do I effectively communicate with youth, right? That's the topic for today. And I was attempting to drive home this concept of story and how a story connected me and Dwayne, a story connected Dwayne and Donna, a story connected Murdoch to Donna, and now a story connects me to you all. Because the premise of my argument, the premise of today's conversation is effective communication with youth starts, watch this, Jason, with the story. Effective communication with youth starts with the story. So y'all, my oratorical mentor, he says that a text without context is merely a pretext for conning people. What does that mean, Murdoch? I'm gonna break it down for you real quick. In essence, what he's talking about is you can take a word out of a sentence out of a paragraph, I see Jason, you're shaking your head because you know exactly what I'm talking about, man. And I can only see Jason's face. That's why I keep talking about Jason, because Jason, that's the face I see right now. You and I locked in today. But a word out of a sentence out of a paragraph out of a page out of a chapter out of a book. And y'all, we can make people think whatever we want. And if we're going to be honest, the youth that we serve, but shoot, even our peers, our stories are consistently taken out of context. People see one instance, people see one mess up or mistake, people see one mark on a record, people see one disciplinary action and think they know exactly where this comes from. exactly the potential in this child, exactly the potential in our stories. And what I'm sharing is those judgments, I would say those are non-contextual assumptions, make it difficult to communicate effectively. And so the premise of my argument today is if we want to more effectively communicate with youth, we've got to do some work on story. Now, I don't want to jump the gun because I'm going to get to this a little bit later, but I'm going to make a point that's very important. And it's that it's going to be very difficult for you to communicate effectively with the youth that you serve if you first have not become comfortable, have not fallen in love with your own story. And a lot of us are not positioned to effectively communicate with others because we first have not fallen in love with our own story. And so today, we're going to walk through that entire process, right? And so some of the context I want to offer to you all is a couple of things I mentioned at IYI. I'm going to give you some new stuff too. I'm going to give y'all some new spice, okay? This is a new situation, but I got to give y'all some context. So Jason, here's the one of the biggest things I told him at IYI back in the spring, man. And it was, if we're going to have this conversation about a story, first of all, what is a story, right? A story is a series, okay, this is good takeaways right here. It's a series of random experiences articulated in an organized fashion. I'm gonna say that again real slow, all right? A story is a series of random experiences articulated in a relatively organized fashion. And not only did I give that definition, Jason, what I also did was I explained the 6 things that impact or influence a person's story. So I know that when I was talking to Donna, there's a number of different folks from a number of different industries, walks of life, and occupations that are going to be on this event today. But we all are brought together by a common mission of serving youth. So what I'm sharing with you all is this. What I'm breaking down for you right now, these 6 different things that influence, impact, shape our story, do this activity with the folks that you serve. Right? I want you to do this with your people. This is a great takeaway for you. You can take what I'm doing with you right now, use this to establish channels for effective communication. Here's the 6 different parts, Jason. Here's the 6 different parts. Number 1, it's music. Music has a significant impact on how we understand, how we articulate, how our story is shaped. And I won't go in depth because I ain't got enough time to go in depth, but I'm sure all of us have a favorite song, a favorite album, maybe even a favorite concert. You know, during quarantine, that was impossible. And there's a lot of artists that are now back on tour and they're traveling for the first time in 2 or 3 years. And we're buying those tickets. We can't wait to be back in those spaces. Music plays a crucial role in our stories. Not just music though, Jason, watch this. Movies. Music, movies. Movies have a significant impact on our story. All of us, we got a favorite movie. Mine is I Am Legend. I won't explain why I did that during IYI. I Am Legend has had a significant impact on my story and my understanding of self. So it's music, it's movies. Jason, it's also role models. Role models have a, or watch this, Jason, not just role models, but also a lack thereof. Sometimes it wasn't the presence of role models that had a significant impact on our story. So for me, I have role models. I have my father, and I thank God for that. You know, my father was in my life, and it's always been in my life, and ain't never gonna stop being in my life. And I'm thankful for that. That's a privilege because a lot of young brothers ain't got that kind of a situation. But I never understood the power of a role model because I had my dad. There's others who not only don't have a father, but they also lack role models. That has a gargantuan impact on how you see yourself and the random but relevant experiences that shape your story. Y'all picking up what I'm putting down? If you picking up what I'm putting down, put in the chat. Murdoch, I'm picking up what you're putting down. I love engagement, Jason. So I'm gonna do these check-ins with the people, make sure they tapped in with us. So it's music, it's movies, it's role models. Watch this. It's also places. Places have a significant impact on our story, right? Because in places you meet people. In places you experience things. In places you learn that the world is much bigger than what you've originally been exposed to. And a lot of us have only seen our own neighborhoods, our own cities, our own states. And it's difficult for us to see ourselves outside of our environments because we ain't something nothing different than our environment, right? So it's not just music, it's not just movies, it's not just role models, it's also places. Here's the last two. It's also things or mementos. I like M's. So it's things, it's mementos, right? So I know for me, it's a journal. I have this journal at my home in a very, very, very locked up safe that no one can find ever. But this journal is something I use to navigate what may have been the most difficult part of my life. And that thing, not only did I use that thing to tell my story, but that thing also plays a crucial role in me understanding where I've come from. So I know where it is I can go. Because if I got through this, Jason, I can get to that. You see where I'm coming from? So it's those are the five. And I got one more for you. Okay, I got one more for you. It's music, it's movies, it's role models, it's place, it's thing, and then it's artists. And this is huge because art is subjective. If we don't know that now, if there's no greater time to embody that statement than right now. Art is so subjective. One thing can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So like my phone case, for example, I don't know if y'all can see that, but my phone case is art. I wanted to buy this in a painting, but I couldn't buy the painting in enough time. So I got the phone case. Now, some of y'all like, Murdoch, what the heck is that? But to me, it means something valuable, right? And so artists could be the musicians, artists could be painters, artists could be culinary artists, it could be chefs at your favorite restaurants. Artists could be, I won't even put a cap on what your artist might be. But when I think about those six things, artists, things, places, role models, music, movies, all of these things shape our story. And so when you're saying, okay, I heard this guy Murdoch, he talked loud, he was very excited, he made a lot of corny jokes. But what did he give me? That's an excellent activity you can use to curate an environment where you can begin to empathize. I'm going to talk about proximity in a second. You can become more proximal to the story of the youth that you serve. And in that proximity, a connection can be developed. And that connection leads to greater and more effective communication. So that's part number one. Part number two, I didn't get to go into much depth about this at IYI, and definitely not this last part. So this is kind of like the icing on the cake for y'all. So I gave y'all the 6 different parts. Now I want to dive a little bit deeper. This next piece, and it's something I talked about at IYI, and it's crucial to today's conversation, right? Peer mentorship, right? Peer mentorship. Peer mentorship is something I heard about for the first time in college by a very good friend of mine. He was going into higher education, but he was a student leader on campus. And he talked about how there's opportunities for us to search for relationships with people who have been where we are and are beyond where we want to be, or maybe where we want to be eventually. And that's great. But there's also power in developing intentional relationships with people who are right there in the thick of it with you. People who are proximal to your experience. Furthermore, not only did I hear my good friend talk about peer mentorship, I heard Brian Stevenson talk at Butler. I'm at Butler right now in my office. See my degrees in the back. Shout out to them degrees, because I went through way too much to get those. Y'all gonna see them every time these little webinars, y'all gonna see it every time. Don't play with me. That was expensive and it was tumultuous. Y'all gonna see it every time. But in all sincerity though, I was back at Butler probably a year ago, heard Brian Stevenson. And Brian Stevenson talked about, we have to remain proximal to the problems that plague society if we're able to solve, fix, or heal from them. He said a lot, but that was my biggest takeaway. If we are to fix, heal, or solve the problems that plague society, Jason, we've got to remain proximal to them. And part of the reason why it's so difficult, or it seems like it's difficult to effectively communicate with youth, is because we have problems that plague our society, that make it very difficult for people to show up. And watch this. I don't even want to talk about the youth for a second. I just want to talk about us as quote unquote adults on this call. Yo, think about how many issues you're plagued with before you even walk out the door of your home that make it difficult to even show up to work to serve these kids. From social problems to mental problems. Come on, we're enduring Not this one pandemic. I say there's 6. I don't have enough time, Jason, to break down all 6. I think we're navigating 6 pandemics right now. We're in the midst of pandemonium. People always talk about the new normal. Ain't nothing normal. Our whole world has changed. Now, I think that positions us where others see people see problems, I see opportunities, right? So I think that positions us to be able to grow, to invent, to innovate, to be creative. But all those things require uncomfortability, right? And as we're navigating this pandemonium, it's not just social problem, but it's mental problems, y'all. And as great as growth is, whoo, it's uncomfortable. It hurts. It's difficult. So you got these social problems, you got these mental problems, these emotional problems, and physical problems. Y'all, it's hard to get out of bed. Y'all know how tired I was this morning? And it's snowing like that outside. A quick story, Jason, because I know, I got to 2 o'clock to be able to break it down. Man, I was at home initially. I'm gonna tell y'all a story. I'm gonna get another story for y'all, Jason. I was at home initially today. So I had planned on taking this webinar from home. So I had my 9 through 1 o'clock classes, then I jump right on here, chop it up with y'all and Jason. So y'all 9:15, 9:20, I'm on my webinar and talking to my students about business ownership. I mean, it's flowing. I'm talking about sole proprietorships. I'm talking about, what else was I talking about? I was talking about partnerships, and I was talking about corporations. I was killing it. I said, okay, brother, you know what you're talking about. You better. And then y'all hear this boom, this thump outside. I said, I wonder what that was, but I disregarded it. And then my Wi-Fi went out. And now I'm like, maybe this thump and this Wi-Fi are connected. And I got this little, similar to this window right here. I got a window like that in my office at my home. And y'all, I open up my window and look out the door. And a tree fell because of the snow. We got a bad snow. I don't know if y'all got a snowstorm there, but we got a really bad snowstorm here. And a tree in my backyard fell and knocked out a power line and my Wi-Fi. So I'm at the crib. It was already hard to get up this morning. Physical. I'm talking about the physical problems, y'all. That's the reason I'm sharing the story. The physical, it was already hard to get up. It's snowing outside, it's cold. I didn't get to work out this morning because the gym was closed because it was snowing outside. So I got a couple extra hours of sleep. But it's hard to get up when you get a couple extra hours because you get comfy in the bed. You picking up what I'm putting down? But I'm able to get up, take a shower, kill my beard. Y'all see the beard? The glasses, waves on swim so they hate on him. I showed up, locked in with my students just like this at the crib. And then a tree falls. And not only does a tree fall, and my students don't see that. The Zoom just blanks out. They don't see what happened. I see what happened. Tree falls, knocks out the power line, knocks out the Wi-Fi. Now I got Wi-Fi. And then, you got to call your internet provider. It takes 11 hours to get on the phone with somebody. Then you talk to them. They don't listen to what you got to say. You talk in circles. And so by God's grace, I got somebody coming out there on Friday. But the reason I bring it up to you is not so that y'all can be sad that my Wi-Fi don't work, which I appreciate the empathy if anybody else is sad, because that sucks. But I mean that because I hadn't even left the house yet. And all that happened. And my students don't know that I'm dealing with that. My parents don't know I'm dealing with that. My peers don't know I'm dealing with that. I've got these problems that are plaguing me. Y'all picking up what I'm putting down? I got these problems, these social problems, these mental problems, these emotional problems, these physical problems that plague me. And then I'm supposed to show up here for y'all and communicate value. I got to smile. I got to have my notes prepared. I got to have a couple of jokes. I got to be able to articulate myself. I got to inspire y'all. That's a lot. And I got these problems that plague me. And I'm 26 years old. Now imagine if I was 6, or I was 8, or I was 12, or I was 14, or I was 16, or I was 18. And just one or a couple of those problems happened to me. Or problems I haven't even named. Those things impact how we show up. Matter of fact, not only do they impact how we show up, watch this, Jason, they impact if we can show up, if we have the capacity to show up, right? Again, so post-quarantine, some organizations, some companies and corporations are changing their workforce policies, right? They got no more work on Fridays. They've instituted mental health day practices. They'll adjust insurance policies to ensure that people can't just go to the doctor, go to the dentist, people get your therapist. There's adjustments that people are making, right? But y'all, imagine if you don't have a policy where you can take a sick day. When's the last time a kid got a sick day? A kid is, and you got to think about why it becomes so difficult. If you ain't got somebody at home that can stay with you if you're there, then you home by yourself and they don't want to. It's so much that goes into why our kids do or don't show up the way that we do. And if we're not careful to remember the context of why they do or don't show up the way that we would appreciate them showing up, even when we don't show up, y'all, we wonder why we're not able to effectively communicate. And that's why I'm driving this point home, that proximity is so important. It's crucial. We have got to remain proximal to the problems that plague our society if we want to fix, heal, or solve them. Similarly, we must remain proximal to the problems that plague our kids, our youth, our children, not the leaders of tomorrow, but the folks who are trying to figure out what the heck is going on today. We've got to remain proximal to their problems if we want to help them fix their own problems, if we want to help them heal from their traumas, from their curses, if we want to empower them to solve their own problem. We got to become proximal to that. And that's the beauty in a story. A story gives you an opportunity to say, you don't know all I went through to get to where I'm at right now. But let me just tell you. Think about it. When Jason introduced me this morning, y'all didn't know none of what I shared. And even in a couple of stories now, prayerfully, I'm better positioned to provide you all value. Prayerfully, now that I shared some stories, come on, Jason, because I shared some stories prayerfully now, you are better positioned to receive my value. Now, because I shared some stories, you might be in a position to not just for me to give you value, for you to receive my value, watch this, but then to take the value I provided and impart it upon somebody else. That's the beauty in a story. That's what I say that stories are the assets that break curses, build wealth, bridge the gap, because they're assets. Assets have value. Assets have power that can be leveraged to do things. And one of the great things that a story, this asset, has the power to do when leveraged appropriately is give us opportunities to become proximal to the people that we serve. Are you still with me, y'all? Let me check this chat real quick before I give you this final little tidbit I got, Jason. I'm going to close it out with a banger, but I got to see if the people feeling me right now. Good. Y'all with me? Y'all with me? Y'all still picking up what I'm putting down? Good, good, good. I love it. I love it. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for the comments. So watch this, Jason. So I talked about the 6 different things that influence a story, right? I talked about the music. I talked about the movies. I talked about the role models or lack thereof. I talked about the places. I talked about the things. I talked about the artists, right? And I said that that's not just good for you to think about. That's an activity that you can use to become more proximal to the youth that you serve. But then, Jason, I took it another level and I said that not only is it important to know these 6 things that influence our stories, but it's also important for us to remain proximal to the problems that plague our society and our kids. Because when we are able to be proximal to that, there's opportunities for connection. And the other side of that connection is more effective communication. Here's my last piece though, Jason. I'm landing my plane here, my guy. And this, nobody, I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if Dwayne is on here, but Dwayne didn't get this piece. So Big Dog, you get to get the 2 for 1, my brother, the 2 for 1. The last piece here is we have to make these things real. Like I gotta give you something. I gotta give you a process that with this process, you can take what's happening on this Zoom screen and apply it in your own situation. Matter of fact, I gotta give you a process that says I can take it off of my screen and turn this into a reality. because screens are powerful. You know what I mean? Like, I spend time on this screen more than I probably should. And I'm unashamed about it because there's a lot of great things that happen on side of these screens. And I'm thankful for that. But y'all, we got to get off of these screens and enter real people's lives. You know, we gotta do that. And so I want to give you a 3-step process, okay, on how to connect with storytelling. Let me rephrase that. I wanna give you a process that will allow you to more effectively communicate with the youth you serve through storytelling via peer mentorship. I'm gonna run that back. This is me landing my plane. That would be decent. This is me landing my plane. I want to give you a 3-step process that will empower you to more effectively communicate with the youth you serve through storytelling via peer mentorship, right? So number one, you've got to start with your own story. You know, prayerfully over the course of this engagement today, you've asked yourself some questions. You're in a position to engage in a personal conversation once you leave, right? Whether it's the 6 different things or this concept of remaining proximal to problems, the social problems, the mental problems, the emotional problems, the physical problems, the financial problems. Prayerfully, just the first 2/3 of my talk today have said, you know what? I got some things I got to think about. I got some things I got to consider. I got some things that I need to think through before I go back out and attempt to more effectively communicate with my partner, with my peers, let alone the kids that I'm serving. Because, and I kind of opened up with this, I want to drive the point home again. You cannot do for others what you have not first done for yourself, right? You know, we've heard the quote that, you know, you can't pour from an empty cup. And guess what, Jason? This mug right here, not empty. And because that mug is not empty, that's good water right there. Because that mug is not empty, I can pour into you all. That's another very corny joke. Prayerfully it lands to land my point. But in all sincerity, we cannot do for others what we've not done for ourselves. And oftentimes we will do for others what we haven't done for ourselves, not because we lack integrity or character. It's out of a spirit of service. What I'm challenging you to think about is how effective is that service if you first have not started with self, right? We're working to communicate more effectively, right? Because I ain't on here to say that y'all not communicating effectively. I ain't telling y'all to do your job different. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not him. I don't believe in walking to other people's spaces telling them what that ain't how I'm getting. I'm just sharing my story, was working with my environments and prayers that it might, you know what I'm saying, positively impact yours as well. And part of what I've learned is even in a spirit of service, right? When in my introduction, what is Murdoch? Murdoch is a purpose-driven, action-oriented, watch this, y'all, servant leader. So crucial to my leadership is my service. So I love service. I think it's crucial to everything that we do. We must serve. We got a call to serve. It's innate to who we are. We must serve. But even in having a passion, a dedication, a commitment to service, our service could be lackluster because we first are not serving ourselves. And if you want to more effectively communicate with the youth, y'all, we got to first start with our own story. And another little tidbit, little quote, little tweet. It might be difficult for you to communicate more effectively with the youth that you serve because you have yet to communicate with your inner child, right? And this is good right here. And it ain't gonna hit for everybody, but I know it's gonna hit for somebody. And if it hit for you, drop it in the comments. Hey, Murdoch, that hit. A lot of us might not be able to connect as effectively or communicate as effectively as we want to with the youth that we serve because we have yet to connect with our inner child. Something I learned my 26th birthday, I took some time to ask myself this question. And I ask a lot of my homies, a lot of my clients this question too. I mentioned it sometimes during engagements like this. If your 11, 12, or 13-year-old self was in a room that you walk into, what would they think? What would they think about you? If you know, people always say, what would you say to your younger self? Nah, I'm not asking that question. I'm saying, if your 11, 12, or 13-year-old self was sitting in a room and then you walked in what would that 11, 12, or 13-year-old think about you? And I'm not asking you to share that right now, because this may or may not be the environment, maybe during the breakout rooms, I don't know. But I took some time to really think about that. And I had to think about what would little Anthony think about 25, 26-year-old Anthony right now. And I won't share with you everything that he would think, because we don't have the time or the space for that. But when I did think about the response to that question, it made me think differently about where I was. It made me think differently about what I've been through. I believe that we go through what we go through to get to where we're meant to. I wholeheartedly believe that, no question. I've gone through what I've gone through because of where it is I have yet to go. Matter of fact, I've gone through forget the future. I've gone through what I've gone through to better position to provide value to y'all right now. I believe that wholeheartedly. But similarly, what I'm saying is, if we want to connect with others, we must first connect with self. And one of the difficulties, one of the reasons why it might be difficult for you to communicate in the way you want to communicate with the kids that you love so dearly, is because you may not be communicating with the kid you got to love in yourself. And part of what I work to do as I get older is I want to reclaim, not even reclaim, because you can't reclaim something you never had. I want to claim the innocence of my youth, an innocence I never had as a child, right? And I ain't got to explain to this group, because I'm sure that you all are aware of these things. Otherwise, I wouldn't be, talking to y'all. But children nowadays, but definitely Black children, are forced to grow up so fast, non-consensually. They're not asked. They're not given a webinar or a guide like this on how to navigate adulthood at 5 years old, or 8 years old, or 12 years old. Their bodies are policed. Their minds are minimized. Their being is criminalized. All those things happened to me as a kid. So this concept of childhood or youthful innocence was foreign to me. And so the older I get, I aim to claim that now. That's why I make jokes. That's why I show up the way that I do. That's why I talk the way I do and walk the way I do. Because as a kid, little Anthony didn't have that. He didn't have the space just to be a kid. And now at 25, 26 years old with a beard, a deeper voice, waves on swim so they hate on him. Now that I'm here, I'm offering reparations to that baby Black boy, because I got the space to do it now. And because I'm in the midst of that process, it uniquely positions me to communicate with young Black males now. Because they see an older brother doing what they wish they could do right now. And they're like, you know what, if he can do it, then I can do it too. And if they don't believe they can, I'm going to create the space for him to be able to laugh, to smile, to giggle, to cry. Things kids should be able to do. But some kids just don't have that privilege. Murdoch, why are you telling me this? One, it's an amazing story. But number two, I had to connect with self to more effectively communicate with them. And that started with me saying, if I'm trying to communicate with youth, what am I doing for my inner child? So that's number one. That's part one of the process, right? You got to start with self. Start with your own story. But then number two, after you start with your own story, you start with self. Then you have got to create space for the youth you serve to share their story. And that goes back, Jason, to the activity I said we could start with, those 6 different things. That's an easy, simple activity. And kids will want to talk about, because they listen to music, for sure. They on Netflix, for sure. Netflix, Hulu, Stars, for sure. Peacock, all that. Okay. The places, maybe not the places. A lot of us don't get exposed to nothing for real. But they definitely got things that they're attached to, mementos that commemorate moments, that manifest the energy, that shapes how they think about the world and other people. Just that simple activity, you give them the space to just talk about themselves. And that may be the first time today they got to talk about themselves. Instead of explaining why they did something, or why you do this wrong, or why you do this differently. Just give them the space to articulate something affirmatively. So once you start with your own story, and you allow the kids to see you start with discovering your own story, create space for them to be able to learn theirs. something I talk about a lot in my work is liberation. I talk about Black liberation all the time. And I talk about the different elements of it. And I won't give all that now. But the last part, in order to be liberated for real, right, is you gotta have space. Because what good is it to have the chains taken off of you if you're still inside of a box? Right? What good is it to no longer have chains across your holding your wrists or your ankles if you're still inside of a box? You're still inside of a cell. Like, what good is that? You got to give people space to express their freedom. That's where liberation becomes manifested. Well, I'm bringing it up to you. It's amazing when the people that we serve are able to see us become free. It's amazing when the people that we serve see us become what we want them to become. We become their inspiration. And a lot of us have no other responsibility but to be an inspiration. But once they're inspired, you've got to give them space to respond to that inspiration. Because what good is it to be inspired and still be confined? What good is it to get that feeling inside, that tingling sensation like, oh, I want to go do something, and then you can't? I won't say it's a wasted opportunity, but man, the consequences of that is crazy. So this process, right, that I'm talking about here, this 3-step process, it starts with your own story. But then number 2, you got to create space for youth to share their own story. Because they're going to be inspired by you discovering your story. They're going to want to do something. So give them space to do what you just did. And now, Jason, my final point. And then you've got to position your youth to become their own resource. That's peer mentorship, Jason. You've got to position your youth to become their own resource. They talk about you can give a person a fish, they'll be cool for a day. But you teach them how to fish, they're good for a lifetime, right? And I'm not a pescatarian, so I have a little bit of an issue with that. Had a bad experience with salmon, so I don't do fish much of anymore. But y'all know where I'm coming from with that. It's one thing to give somebody something, a thing. It's another thing to empower them with a process they can apply for the rest of their life. What I'm saying to you is, real empowerment is not being the person who the youth comes to feel free, to share and be vulnerable. Real empowerment is modeling a process that the people you serve can understand, and then putting them in a space to apply it so that when you're not there, your presence is still felt in the form of inspiring them to institute that process. And that's what I'm challenging y'all to do. Start with your own story. All right, create space for youth to share theirs. And then last but not least, position the youth to become their own resource through peer mentorship, right? In the way that you take what I've shared today and whatever way you do in your own community, you go to apply that and put that in different places and spaces so that the kids you serve might be able to apply it. What I'm sharing with y'all is, how do you ensure that part of that process of you taking this and giving them that you don't make yourself the key? Don't center yourself in that conversation. And I'm not saying that y'all would, because I don't know y'all. What I am saying is that intentionally ensure that the youth you serve see each other as the key to solving, healing, or fixing these problems that plague our society and their lives. Because when you do that, you're creating a culture inside of your classroom, your community center, your relationships, your coffee shops, wherever it is y'all connect, wherever it is y'all meet. You're creating a culture backed by a process that can scale in volume, but also in value. And it starts because you leverage your vulnerability to show the leaders of the youth that you serve that if I can do it, you can do it too. And why do I believe that I can do it if you can do it too? Because guess what? When you shared your story, I saw myself inside of that. When you shared your story, I could empathize with your experience. And Jason, that's the proximity. You cannot empathize with something that you have not become proximal to. And the story is the tool that allows us to become proximal enough to begin to empathize. And through that empathy comes connection with a number of different consequences, including more effective communication. And what I'm sharing with y'all is I don't care about effective communication, for instance. I care about effective communication for a process that's sustainable, because that's beneficial to the youth that you serve, because then they become the solution to their own problem. That's empowerment. We talk about empowerment, but we don't empower. That's real empowerment. It's great for the youth, but it's also great for your programming, because it changes the dynamic of your relationship with them kids, but also the success outcomes for the programs. Because now your success metrics are not able to just be marked by who came to this event or who participated in this program. But now you can begin telling the stories of what youth are doing outside of your program, outside of your space, outside of being face-to-face with you. And all of that starts with the story. So thank y'all so much for y'all time. We started with discussing the 6 things that influence a story: music, movies, role models, places, things, and artists. And then I talked about the power of proximity and the fact that we have got to remain proximal to the problems that plague our society if we ever want to what? Fix, heal, or solve them. And then I landed my plane, just landed it, or we are back at the airport, or we are offboarding the plane. We're exiting the plane. I don't know if offboarding is a word. We're exiting the plane. And then I gave you a process, a 3-step process that says, Murdoch, this was cool, but make it concrete. And I said, start with your own story. Create space for your youth to share theirs. And then position the youth that you serve to become their own resource through peer mentorship. So never forget, Murdoch is about we and not me. And there's not one moment I spend not thinking about us. And this was another random but relevant moment with Murdoch. Thank y'all so much for your time.
Wow, incredible stuff. Thank you so much for sharing. Lots of great comments in the chat bar there. There's some questions too that we will address later on. Truly, Mr. Murdoch, you were an inspiration and you spoke from the heart. And I believe it's to be said, to be true, that relationships should be the base of all that we do. And it comes by knowing that every one of us have a story and that we can be relevant. And so thank you so much for sharing that. So at this time, folks, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then I will disperse you into breakout groups. I'll put some chats starters there so that you guys can discuss those. And then we will come back and open the floor for any questions that you might have for our guest speaker today. So again, thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. And the comments are still coming in, and very powerful stuff. Thank you for everything. We believe in what you're sharing. A lot of great feedback. So thank you so much for that. All right, at this time, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then I will disperse you into your groups. Thanks. Well, welcome back. It looks like everyone has returned back to the main sessions. I hope that your breakout sessions were fruitful and you had the opportunity to create your story, maybe even share your story in those breakout sessions, and then learn some practical tools and tips to help you to be able to effectively communicate with youth. Again, we want to open up this time for some questions. So if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself, but first make sure that we can identify you by putting a hand raise up, or if you want to type it in the chat, and then we can go ahead and start firing away with those questions. So, or does anybody want to share something that you guys discussed in your breakout sessions? All right, I see a couple hands up. So, Emily Carpenter, I see your hand up. Would you please? There you are.
Hi. I wanted to share what we talked about in our breakout session. I thought it was really great. We were talking about how it's really important to practice active listening with the teens and work with them on effective communicating, because they maybe don't have the opportunity to handle that at home. So then demonstrating it to them, teaching it to them, and then telling them that there are important things that they can do to be better listeners and speakers to people in their lives teaches them how to effectively communicate better. And I think that that's really important. But we also talked about just like honestly listening to them, respecting them and their opinions, offering constructive feedback and mentoring, not assuming or mind reading, and then using I statements instead of you statements with them is very effective. But like giving them the space to like telling them your story and then giving them space to curate their own story, but not putting pressure on them. So something that I do when I work with small groups with youth is like institute a pass. So if I ask a question or say something like, tell me about whatever, or are you ready to talk about whatever? And if they say no, I say they're allowed to say pass, right? They can pass to that opportunity. We can come back to them, or they don't have to do it at all. It's important to take note that they're not doing it all the time if it's the same person, but giving them space and respecting their boundaries in turn of doing everything else that I talked about. But that's from our whole group. Like our group was like talking about all those suggestions. So I think that's really great to when you're working with youth to institute as many of those as you possibly can to better get where they are and meet them where they are instead of expecting them to come to where you are, whether we're talking about emotionally or like in the same like actual physical space or mentally or with their own story.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Any feedback, Mr. Murdoch?
I think that's great. I think this concept of instead of forcing somebody to come to you, you go to them. Meeting people where they're at is definitely crucial. And I think, Emily, that pass piece, important too. I think a lot of people might be scared to institute the pass because they think people abuse it. There's this underlying assumption you make that you don't give people space because they're going to abuse it. You got to ask yourself about what biases do you maintain and are you reinforcing by not just giving people space. So I thought that was great for sure. Shout out to y'all group.
Awesome. Yes, session 3, the breakout room was one of the happening rooms there. So great conversations as I was trying to bounce in and out of all the rooms there. The next hand that I saw was Clarence Fletcher. Are you still there? And did you want to have the opportunity to share? All right. Let me see. I'm trying to go through all these. This is wonderful that we still have all these participants on and sharing and connecting. That's what Lunch Tables is all about. It's about taking the resources given to us and then going back and applying those to the fields that we're in to better our relationships and empower youth that we serve. Any questions that you might have, throw them in the comments or in the chat section there. Throw them in the chat section. All right. Well, do you have any closing thoughts, Mr. Murdoch, before I close us out for today?
Just want to say thank y'all for the opportunity. You know what I'm saying? Prayerfully, something that y'all got today, you're able to apply. Prayerfully more than one thing, but definitely one thing. And if I could leave you with anything else, is just give this to the people that you, something I tell a lot of my people is that loving yourself is a revolutionary action and you're worth the revolution. It's an affirmation I practice regularly. And when people hear it, you know, it does some folks that practice it too. So I don't know if y'all have affirmations or you got your little words on the mirrors or notes throughout the crib, but that's one that continues to ground me and keep me encouraged. So that would be all that I would say. Again, thank y'all for the opportunity and definitely appreciate y'all for it.
Excellent. Thank you. There is a question in the chat from Miss Alexis Nelson, and it says, hello, working with risk youth with behavioral or mental health challenges. How do you practice inclusion?
And that's for me.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if Alexis is able to jump off of the muted mic. I feel like
Okay,
this is a packed question potentially. Would love
okay.
to hear some expounding. And if not, I'll just go off what I see. But I don't know if you got any space to expound.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, I find often sometimes, when we're doing work with at-risk youth, sometimes we have a mixture of children who are challenged behaviorally and emotionally, and at times they're kind of disregarded because they're seen as maybe disrupting the group. But how do you, what ways do you include? Like, how can you include it without disrupting? You want to make sure that you're meeting everyone's needs, but sometimes those behaviors may overshadow or kind of take control in what you're trying to do with everyone's group. So how do you practice inclusion without taking so much time focusing on, okay, these different behaviors or these different challenges, but still making sure everyone in the group get their needs.
No, for sure. I think that's a great, and thank you for expounding too. Definitely appreciate you for that. So a couple things I would say. I think number one, it's important to think about how the environment is curated. So I think that, there's that old saying, like, it's diversity is brought to the dance, and then inclusion is like setting the playlist. And then I forget what equity is. We don't even talk about like liberation in that conversation, so I won't go there. But the reason I bring that up is because when you talk about inclusion being set in the music sets the vibe. The music sets the environment. And so kind of using that used quote for what it is you're saying is we got to create environments where different kinds of people can succeed, where different kinds of people with different dispositions and identities feel as though the space was for them. I was talking to my clients last night about, truly liberative experiences centralize a person. And a lot of people have never felt free before because they don't walk into environments that were specifically made for them. And it's difficult to expect somebody to be their full self if they can't walk into that environment feeling like that space was fully made for them. And so I think part of it is like, how are we curating environments, or how are we creating spaces where they say every kind of student can succeed, but that's much easier said than done. So I'm not gonna make it sound like it's like a super duper easy thing to do. But I think that's kind of like where it starts. Like this concept of, has the environment been curated where a student with a behavioral or mental health challenge can even succeed? And if you say, no, that's impossible, then again, like, what biases do you actively maintain about people who have behavioral and mental health challenges? That they somehow inhibit the progress of other people? And that's your problem right there. And so part of what I think about is, who is the environment curated for? Right? Part of the reason why I'm very unapologetic about talking about Black folks in these spaces is, they talk about when no, we are not free until we all are free. If we're attempting to create space for a trans, Black, poor, disabled youth, where in that environment they can succeed, there's going to be so many other people that by nature of being in that environment are going to have space to succeed as well. But we don't create space for the most marginalized youth, or the most marginalized students, or the most marginalized people. We create environments to the extent that we're comfortable. And that's what I was talking about earlier in my piece, this nature of growth, especially as we navigate this post-quarantine world. I see opportunity where people see problems, but that's difficult. And so, Alexis, what I say in response to that is, if you want quote unquote at-risk youth with behavioral or mental health challenges to feel like they can succeed in your environment, make that environment for them. And then how do we ensure that other students don't see that as a problem? Other youth don't see that as a problem, by how they can succeed as well. So that's like 2.5 minute response to that question. Because that's super duper packed. At least I think it is.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that, you know, and you said something really huge, like you said, create the environment, you know, set the tone, set the, you know, and that's really good. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for asking.
Awesome, awesome. Is there any other questions or any other comments? All right, well, thank you all for attending today. And again, thank you, Mr. Murdoch, for spending the time with us this afternoon and sharing your heart, sharing strategies, sharing processes, and encouraging us as youth workers to continue to get out into the fields and to encourage youth to become themselves and to create that story. So as we wrap up here today, the webinar will be available on our website once it's edited, and it will also be emailed out as well, along with a survey. So we encourage you to take the survey to let us know how we could do better on our end to meet your needs, and also to put future topics that you're interested in so that we can continue to research those and find the key people that we need to bring to the table so that we all can grow professionally and continue to serve the youth with excellence. Again, we appreciate you being here today. And if you are in need of any credits, continuing education credits, you can email us in the survey that will be sent to you, and we will get that certificate printed and get that to you so that you can have that for your profile and your personal records. Again, thank you so much. It was an awesome presentation. Thank you for the feedbacks, for the comments, for the questions, for the engagement. We all can do better. And I believe that's what Mr. Murdoch is challenging all of us to do, is to create a space for the youth that we serve so that we can continue to engage with them and help them to believe in themselves so that they can be productive citizens of this time that we live in. So we appreciate you all. Thank you so much. And you all have a great rest of your day. Take care.